Earlier this week, someone commented on my LinkedIn post and said that it's so powerful to show up authentically. It's so powerful about showing up live and authentically online. And they said, you do it so perfectly, Deirdre Martin. And oh my gosh, let me just tell you about showing up authentically and doing it perfectly. What a lovely compliment to get first and foremost. And if you're watching, you know who you are, and thank you very much. But there is no perfect in showing up. I've already blundered on this live video. And so, if you're thinking about showing up and how you can be authentic, it's literally letting those vulnerabilities out. It's not being afraid to fuck up and make a mistake when you start speaking, because those mistakes are the things that absolutely make you authentic. Earlier this week on my Master Your Business podcast, I had the incredible Becky Whitaker who showed up and we spoke about going live on LinkedIn. I interviewed her about going live on LinkedIn because it's not something I've had training at. I literally just show up and do my thing and try and share value with you. And in doing so, I do get messages from people who've watched. People do respond and say, well, that was really helpful, insightful. They ask me questions, and it's really worthwhile then because I know that I'm helping people, and that's why I'm here in the first place. And the thing that people always say to me when they meet me then is that, God, you're exactly like you are on LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, who else would I be? But let me tell you, I wasn't always. And, people talk about authenticity, including me. And that's really what this is about, because that's what this video is about today. This live is about today, because are we truly being authentic? I think a lot of the time we're not, especially on LinkedIn. I think a lot of the time people are performing on LinkedIn. And excuse me, I even saw a post or an email I read by Justin Welch. He's a LinkedIn guru. If you're not following him, I would recommend you check him out. He really talks about LinkedIn success for people who are leaving the corporate world and are starting up their own business or that sort of thing. But what was interesting in having that conversation and or in that email that he wrote was he talks about, like, he shows this positive side of what his life and business could look like, not in a toxic positivity kind of way, but more so in an aspirational way, as in this is what he's striving towards. But it was interesting to see that the version of himself that he portrays on LinkedIn and the types of things that he's talking about is not what's necessarily happening behind the scenes. It's all aspirational. Some of it is factual and correct, but he shared quite openly that it's not all exactly as it is right now. He's basically on LinkedIn, he portrays this really solid, stable entrepreneur. Whereas what he said in the email was that, yeah, some of that's aspirational. So curious. But interesting is that what I think is interesting about this in terms of authenticity is that often what authenticity is showing up in the way that we think we should versus showing up in the way that we actually are. And it's about closing the gap on that. And for me, that was a learning curve. It was something that happened to me when I worked in banking. I had LinkedIn training. Gosh, it must be nearly 15 years ago now. But I had LinkedIn training. I was taught to show up, to speak this way. When I worked in banking, I used to have to write very formally, very professionally. I had to make sure all my I's were dotted, my T's were crossed, so that somebody wouldn't come back and complain about something I'd said. I had to be mindful of my tone. And I had to read it like three different hats on. How will the client perceive this? How will my colleagues perceive this? And if the media got a hold of this, how would they perceive it? So everything I wrote, I thought about it from those three angles. But that meant when I started posting and showing up on LinkedIn, I was coming at it like that. I wasn't coming at it like it's me here just talking to you, right? And so I was performing as though I was still working in the bank, but that's not how I am. And how I would have written those letters and communicated with clients in a lot of the ways was not how I actually engaged face to face. And I suppose once I started my business, it took me, I would say, the best part of 2 years to realize how I sound and how I actually show up. And what I've seen since with clients is that a lot of clients haven't given themselves the space to figure that out. And especially newer entrepreneurs, if you've just started your business in the last 2 years since ChatGPT came out, you probably don't know what your tone of voice is if you've been using ChatGPT all this time. Seriously. And so that's a problem because you don't sound like you sound like how ChatGPT makes you sound. That's not good. That's not your authentic self. And what is coming across is potentially something like I would have written when I started my business a couple of years ago. So the moral of the story is being authentic is closing the gap between who you really are and who you think and how you show up. So who you really are and how you show up. And whether you swear like a drunken fishwife, like I do sometimes, whether you are very professional. And let me just say here, if you are very professional, that's absolutely okay too. The thing is that no matter where somebody meets you, encounters you, or engages with you, that you show up in exactly the same way all of the time. And I believe that, how you are with your friends and your family and your loved ones should be exactly how you are when you engage with clients. It should be how you show up on LinkedIn. And for me, that's been a journey. When I started off, I used to hide behind graphics and carousel posts and videos that I made on Canva that I spent hours making on Canva, let me just say. And if I was going to share a photo, it was a stock image. I was mortified putting pictures of myself on LinkedIn. And if you've been following me for a while, I'm fucking all over the place on LinkedIn. I'm so sick of looking at myself. I'm like, oh God, I have to take another selfie so I can show up on LinkedIn. But the reality is, it's those things that make you authentic, and those are the things that help you connect and become relatable with your clients. Once I got over myself, let's just say, I got some brand photos taken. That was the first step to feel more comfortable. But the first set of brand photos I had taken, it was during COVID, and it was like, there was COVID lockdowns, and then, the lockdowns were lifted for a time, and then they were back on. In between a lockdown, I went and had a brand photo shoot. And like my hair was down to here. Now I don't have the kind of hair that can grow down to here, let me just say. So I look terrible. Like when I look back at them now, I'm like, oh my gosh. But moral of the story is doing that was a process to help me step into my authentic self. It helped me become more vulnerable and share more about who I am and how I sound and how I show up. And it's definitely way more like this. And again, before I used to record LinkedIn videos, I would post them once a week, but I scripted them. I couldn't talk off the cuff like I'm talking now because I was afraid I might say fuck. I was afraid I might fuck up and fumble over my words, and people would perceive me as not being professional, not being credible, not being a thought leader, not being capable of serving them. What bullshit was I saying to myself at the time? And if this is resonating with you, let me just say, you're talking bullshit to yourself. Stop that. And what's really interesting about this, and I've researched this in terms of authenticity, is that 88% of people say authenticity is a key factor in deciding which brands they support. So if you're on LinkedIn and you're hiding behind graphics, you're missing a trick. If you're on LinkedIn and you're reposting other people's content, you're missing a trick. That's not authentic for you. It's not adding any value to them. And to be fair, while I really appreciate when people share my content, excuse me, at the same time, if it's not going to serve your audience, don't share it. It's of no value to your audience. And really everything that you show up for on LinkedIn should be to serve someone else. And when you do that authentically, oh my gosh, seriously, you will be on the path to freedom, and so much good karma will come your way. And what's mad is the research shows how pressured people still feel today to present this perfect version of themselves online. And so when I got that comment earlier this week, what it really made me think was, yeah, I show up. It's by no means perfect, but it's perfectly imperfect. And that's okay because that's the best version of you. So I think if any of what I've said resonates with you, drop me an emoji in the comments. Like, drop me a fire emoji or a thumbs up emoji in the comments if you've ever felt the pressure to show up as a version that you're not. Um, because I think these are signs that you're presenting authenticity instead of actually living it. So there's so much in terms of benefits, but there's risks in terms of not being authentic. Like if you're not authentic, there's a potential lack of trust between your audience and yourself. There's less likely to be high engagement on your content, and potentially you're going to miss out on opportunities because people won't get to know you. They won't get to get a vibe for who you are. And people will sense that something just feels a little bit off. And the more you're trying to show up as somebody you're not, that misalignment can lead to you feeling imposter syndrome, like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to find me out. Of course they fucking are, because you're trying to pretend to be someone else, right? And pretending to be someone else is seriously like a recipe for burnout. So avoid that as well. So I've got a can't even speak now, you see, 3P framework for authenticity. And P number one is personality. So be consistent with how you talk and how you share. If you have any corporate stuff, get rid of that. The second P is perspective. Own your opinions, stand for something, and really show up and fight for that. And you know what? Be controversial if that aligns with your brand voice. And the third P is presence. So show up fully, share stories, lessons, real life experiences, yours or clients or somebody else. And, post content that reflects your real values and experience. Share your real voice, not some professional mask like I did. And share wins and lessons and failures and all that sort of good stuff from clients as well. This is a lot of what I work through with clients, and I'll be talking more about this in the LinkedIn Visibility Challenge next week. If you haven't registered for it yet, be sure to do so. If you're wondering, what am I talking about? Send me a message with the word visibility and I'll share details with you so you can go and check it out. But it's a challenge to help you show up really authentically on LinkedIn for 5 days starting next Monday. And on there, you will get loads of tips and insights into how to be visible and really be authentic on LinkedIn to get some eyeballs on your content, to get things moving, a bit of traction and stuff like that. So DM me the word visibility and I'll send you all the details. Okay, I gotta run, have another meeting. Thanks for joining live, watching today. And until next week, same time, same place, I will see you on LinkedIn. Hopefully in my DMs, message me visibility.